Right, so let's continue my CAS project. And today we're gonna talk about refugees and immigrants. I'm here with Angus. Angus, say a little bit about your background, where are you from?
I was born in Ireland. I lived there for 15 years. I lived in the southeast with my mother and father. A few years back, we moved here to the Netherlands, where my father got a job at university. We're quite international. My sister's adopted from Ethiopia. My dad's Dutch. My mum's Irish, and my stepmother is English. So big family.
Yeah. So let's first study about what is our definition of immigrant.
Of immigrants. I assume that my personal definition would be anybody who migrates from one nation or region to another. So I suppose I would be an immigrant myself, as would anybody else who moves here. Um, it's One can't just subject a certain region to the term immigrants. You can't just say these are immigrants, but these people moved here legally, therefore they are not. Because like you may have natural residents and people who've lived there for all their lives, but then simultaneously you also have people who may, I don't know, their parents or grandparents might have moved there, but they are also a member and a part of the country itself.
Right. Do you think that like as globalization is growing, that we should get more strict borders between countries and don't let many people to go from one country to another, or do you think like we should be more liberal?
I think that we should be more liberal actually, because if we're like relying upon one another more and more in terms of trade, communication, and transfer of services, then we need to have a bit, more liberal rules regarding who can go where and such. Because if you look at, say, the European Union, they have very liberal borders between their countries, and it works fabulously. People can go from one area to another without much strife or struggle, and that's why there's a lot of controversy over Brexit and the United Kingdom leaving the EU. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years the European Union will become one united country as opposed to a lot of divided ones. That's how interconnected they are and how much they are like improving and growing closer together. If you impose stricter regulations on borders, then it's going to become much more difficult to get what you need, especially with how much people are relying upon one another. I think if we impose stricter border regulations, then we're just going to go back to times of strife and war eventually.
Good point. Yeah, my thoughts on this is that in one day we're gonna have like really big nations like EU gonna become only one country. Maybe the Americas gonna. Yeah, I think it will be good because it will be more easy to trade and those things. Right. So, do you consider yourself an immigrant?
Um, Not actively, but by the technical term, I am an immigrant. I am somebody who has moved here from another country, who has not lived here before. Yes, my dad's Dutch, so I'm technically a Dutch citizen, but regardless of that fact, I am new to the country, and like I barely speak any Dutch. I don't know much about Dutch culture when I moved here, and yeah, I'm adapting a bit now, but still, I think that I am an immigrant.
Have you ever suffered for prejudice?
No, I've never suffered from prejudice. I think that immigration in general is common enough here from many people moving in and relatives that people don't really mind. And thankfully, everybody speaks relatively good English, which makes communicating very easy compared to, say, I don't know, if I move to Estonia, for example, where they might not speak as good English.
Or Brazil would be difficult. Now let's come to refugees. So refugees is an immigrant that moved from a country because a war or politic things. It's not like because he wants to move, but because he needed to move to another country. What is your thoughts about like countries that don't like to accept refugees and those things?
I can see where they're coming from in some cases. I can understand that if you have such a large body of immigrants wanting to enter the country, that the government might be afraid that they can't handle the economic necessities for that amount of immigrants. And they've had their homes taken from them because of war or political strife. And I mean, one of human rights is the right to shelter and food, clean water, and basically equal rights, I assume. Now, if you don't even have anywhere to live permanently and you're constantly on the move, then that must be incredibly stressful for you, and especially if you have a family and children, because they're living their lives on the road. They don't have a home to grow with them. And yes, I can understand the government's point of view, but I still believe that seeing as how some governments are closing their borders and not allowing any refugees in, and then other governments are like allowing too many in, so that they can't actually support that many, and it leads to relatively bad living conditions. It would be best if you spread around the influx of it, so that it's a bit easier to manage and it can be handled more efficiently, and mutually benefits both the refugees and the natural citizens within the country.
Right. And do you think we are improving, like in the way managing the refugees, or do you think like it's the same? Like sometimes some countries don't want to accept, and then one country needs to accept a lot of refugees and get some economic trouble.
I think that more attention has been brought to the matter. The public are now much more aware of the trouble with the refugee crisis, and they're aware of why sometimes they're not being allowed into countries and why it's so difficult in order to do this. But ultimately, I'm not sure if we've made many good improvements over the years. There are still a lot of refugees coming in and not being given a home, or having to wait for months, if not years, for official acceptance within the country. So I think that we could be improving in the future, but up to this point we haven't improved much.
Yeah, I think like the sports tournaments, like championships, such as Olympics.
Yeah, they had the refugee team there.
Yeah, and the World Cup too, because many immigrants like that scores goals. That like people say, oh, like immigrants play from a nation. There is no problem with this. I think this helps you the awareness of how we should like manage with immigrants and refugees. So yeah, I think now, what you think that we should do to improve our managing refugees, like about UN or everything? What is your thoughts about how to solve this problem?
On how to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Well, first you need to consider both the source of the problem and also the resolution, so how to resolve it. I mean, most refugees are forced out of countries because of war or political instability, something like that. If these could be resolved, and that's not very easy to do, I understand, and it can't be done instantaneously, and there are many problems associated with it, but if like more peace negotiations could be agreed upon between warring factions, or there could be improved living conditions, or whatever the cause of the war or political instability is, could be resolved by a lot of different nations or a lot of different representatives coming together.
Some agreements about between the nations.
Yeah, and people just talking it out and trying to find a solution, such as in the United Nations, which is, it already works very hard upon doing this. And then if you look at the consequences of refugees within the country, I think that there needs to be more available shelter and more available housing at cheaper prices, and a better way of integrating immigrants within the country and making them part of the culture. So for example, language classes in order to help them become integrated, finding efficient jobs for them to live off, and also like making better temporary shelters for them to stay in whilst they are trying to get within a country of some sort. So if you make the sheltering better, then they're going to be a lot happier, and there's going to be a lot better living conditions in general for anyone who's trying to just find shelter and trying to find a place for their family. Because, I mean, if to some of the basic human needs, then they're going to be deeply unhappy, and it's going to lead to a lot of, well, different consequences based upon, starvation or just general unhealthiness, I guess. I mean, diseases, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like language is a great barrier that some refugees like face it, because I mean, if you know how to speak the language of the of like the
You
person
feel
you're
much
taking-
more
yeah, you feel
connected.
much more connected and comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think language classes would be really good. And yeah, I think too like governments should like sit down, talk, try to find like some laws that are helping the integration of the refugees. And yeah, I think it's this.
Mm.
So it was good to talk to you,
Yeah.
really good. And yeah, I think it's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and to the next cast.